Sometimes I'm talking about black history, African history. I'm not sure where to go with it. I've sat down, I've listened to people speak today, and a lot of my material in here has been said. So I'm going to insert some stuff that I'm hoping that is new information and give you some new challenges and opportunities as you move forward. When I spoke to Don Stiles, who I've known for many moons, he told me not to say how long. But he used to have plenty hair at one time. And now I've seen the transformation. And I was totally impressed with the way he presented himself, the work that he's doing, the work he continues to do. Totally impressed with the presentations today, the quality of the presentations, the information that is being shared. And you guys should be congratulated for that, right? Seriously, a big round of applause to yourselves. You know, I look around the room and I see pieces here, pieces there, and it all comes together as one. And this doesn't happen by chance, it happens because people believe in this work. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the importance of Black History Month. I'm going to talk about why is it necessary to do this. And I'm going to start off by saying that this is not about rewriting history about Black people. It's really actually reclaiming and writing the history of African people, because the story has never been told to its fullness. I cannot stand up here and speak about the significance of African history in the Canadian fabric without speaking about our experiences. It's just like me talking about Canadian history and not including the importance of the Winnipeg General Strike in 1990 and how that formed the social justice movement in Canadian history. You cannot talk about Canadian history by leaving out significant pieces. The strike, the Winnipeg General Strike in 1919 was more than significant. It set the tone for Canada as it moved forward. Right? So, Black History Month is an opportunity to make this right. I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to try and cut everything short, but still be impactful. If I get emotional, don't feel away, but I do because I'm very passionate about what I do, right? I come from a program called African Canadian Heritage Association. It was formed in 1969. And in this story, you'll see why it's important to do this work. 1969, children, Black children in Toronto were going to school, and they were coming home bawling their eyes out. They don't want to be Black. They don't want anything to do with Africa, because all the depictions, all the stories, everything they were told in the school books, in the school system, was negative. They would come home bawling their eyes out. I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to be African anymore. In fact, what they were doing in 1969 is they'd be walking around their house with a towel on their head saying, I want to have blonde hair. I don't want Black hair anymore. They would take clothespins. Everybody knows what clothespins are. And they would stick them to their nose and said they don't want broad noses anymore. They want skinny noses. They would take talcum powder and spread all over their skin, and says, I don't want to be Black anymore. These are little kids. Where did that come from? It came from a system that was rooted in telling history from one perspective at the expense of another. So some parents got together and said, enough is enough. Enough is enough. We have to do this ourselves. 1969, the community got together and said, we're going to start teaching our history properly. Interestingly, when they started doing that, a lot of black people within the community said, no, let's bygones be bygones. Let's just move forward. We don't want to go back there. And if it wasn't the voice of a white person who was the head of the East York School Board at the time said, yes, I think this is important. Providing space and opportunity. And that program was started in 1969 as the Black Heritage Program, right? Similar to when the Afrocentric School was coming about. There were many voices within the community says, forget about it. Let's move on. How can you forget about your history? How can you forget about the experiences of your ancestors and their contribution and the significance? But in 1969, this was a critical time in Canadian history, in Toronto history, because that program is going to be celebrating 50 years of existence next year. And it's been teaching African and Caribbean history to kids in our community since then. They don't do it with government funding, because I call it sticky money. When you get money from the government, it's sticky money. There's always strings attached to it, right, you know? And we're not allowed to do what we have to do. So the parents in the program are the ones that drive it, right? And I look back and see who has come through our program. And I see Tando Hyman, who was the first principal of the Afrocentric. I see Warren Salmon. I see Paulette Sr. All these people come out of the union movement, you know, right? Right? All the people fighting for social justice in their work are now fighting for social justice in our community, right? And I can go down the list, and people say, well, Louis, why didn't you mention my name? Because I can't remember them all, right? But that was from the community, by the community, for the community, about making it right. These people know walking tall and talking proud about who they are, right? I dare not challenge them, because they will have the facts. I'm telling a couple stories, and that's going to be my presentation. Another story is there's a young lady in the program, 11 years old, and she's going to school, and it's Black History Month. So the teacher, standing up here just like me, and says, guess what? This is slavery. Fortunately, in Canada, we didn't have slavery. It was only in the States. So Kessie, who is the young girl's name, says, she's an ACHA student, right? Puts up her hand and says, excuse me, miss, we did have slavery in Canada. And the people here have spoken about that, so I'm not going to go over it. And the teacher says, pardon me? No, we did not, right? And Kessie came back to the program and says, can we get some information to go back to the teacher? And put the facts on the table. And the following week, Kessie came back and said, look, I presented the facts. The teacher still does not acknowledge it, but now I am the residential expert at school on African history because all the students come to me, right? That makes me feel proud, right? Someone has to be the driver in this change in terms of making this right. We cannot talk about Canadian history if we exclude the significant contribution of African people. Donald did an excellent job of going through a list of names. The incident that the young, I'm going to say young, I shouldn't say young, that you spoke about in Montreal with Hilton and stuff. Okay. You cannot talk about Canadian history if you don't insert these things. It's like me coming here with a puzzle and I give everybody a piece and everybody thinks they've got the full story. And none of you have the full story until we all come together and put that puzzle together to form the picture, right? So we fought for the Afrocentric School because we wanted to make this right. The initial requirement for the Afrocentric School was 40 students to get a principal. When they opened the doors in September that year, the registration was 120 and it would go up to 220, right? Change has to take place. Who's going to be the driver of the change? I was speaking to a young man here just a while ago. I said, think about society if there was no union. Think about it. If there was no union, if there was nobody fighting for social justice, fighting for equality, fighting for equity, don't underestimate your role in the fabric, in the building fabric of this nation, right? I'm going to tell you another quick story. This is about gun violence. I'm not supposed to mix the two of them together, but I'm going to sort of bend my rules a little bit here, because gun violence is not a black people's problem. But I'm going to show you where the social justice issue is. In the last 3 years in the city of Toronto, we've seen a 100% increase in gun violence, homicides, occurrence, and incidents. And no political leader wants to address it, right? So when we started Zero Gun Violence movement, which is a very bold and ambitious objective, zero gun violence, even my wife thinks I'm crazy, right? I think, Lou, that's impossible. And she says, aren't you watching the news, aren't you? And I said, look, we already have zero gun violence in the city of Toronto. And she says, Louis, I'm going to call the doctor on you. Your medication has expired. You're not taking it, right? And I says, Wendy, look, listen to me. We only have zero gun violence in certain parts of the city for certain people, right? And in another part of the city, we don't have it at all. There's this huge gap in terms of economic, social conditions. Somebody living in Rosedale, they're excited about living because they have all the opportunity, resources, and support to live a full life. In another part of the city, say Rexdale, is the total opposite. There's this huge gap and it's getting wider. And the hustle becomes important for survival for a population because there's nobody backing them. There's nobody backing them. If they disappeared, many people wouldn't even miss them. So when we talk about social justice, I'm going to insert Zero Gun Violence movement. We're a social justice movement trying to make this right. But we cannot do it by ourselves, right? You have the institution, you have the experience, you have the resources. The civil rights movement in the United States of America could not have taken place without the unions and the faith community. We do not get to Zero Gun Violence movement with you guys on the sidelines. Because you have to bend, you have to interrupt, you have to make right what is wrong. Your DNA tells me that you are the right people. The union is the right place because of the history, right? When we see you missing in these discussions, we're concerned, right? So Black History Month is an opportunity to make things right. It's an opportunity that is available to us all. You don't have to be a part of a union. We have a network of people. I see some of the people in this room right now. Jadam and I work with him in a youth shelter, trying to make things right for these young men. There's other people here I see, right? We can do better to make this society just, not for some but for all. We can do better to make our society safe, not for some but for all, right? And that's why Black History Month is important, because it gives us an opportunity to shine some light on a population, on a people, on a history that has been neglected purposely, not by chance, but by design, right? So who's going to make this right? Children's Aid Society, the Toronto District School Board, employment agencies. The top 15 employers in the city of Toronto will not hire anybody with a criminal record. The top 15 employers. These kids don't have a chance. They don't have a way out. So when they do their hustle, don't complain, right? Because that's the only way they're going to survive if they have to do it by themselves. Where are the unions? Where's the tip of the spear that's going to make the difference, right? Are we going to count on the police? No, hell no. Are we going to count on Queen's Park, City Hall, Ottawa? Hell no. It has to come from the streets. It has to come from the struggle for those people that want to make things right, not for some but for all. It's in your DNA. It's in your DNA. That's your history. Don't give it up. Become fighters, not of the past, but fighters of today and fighters of tomorrow. Right? Finally, the drums that were here a while ago, the drummers. I keep telling them, when you drum, tell the story. Because before there was internet, before there was a radio, before there was a newspaper, before there were TV stations, the drum is how we communicated. So if there was an event taking place in a community at 11 p.m., the drums would tell the story to the next village, and the next village would tell the story to somebody else. So when they all woke up in the morning, everybody knew whether the news was exciting or bad. Everybody knew. And the people that were doing the actual drumming, they were specialized. The chief of the village, because the message was so important, only allowed certain people to handle the drum because it was so important in terms of the livelihood and survival of the village and the communication amongst its people. So we listen and we hear the drums. I want people to understand the history of the drum. So when we talk about Black History Month, it's not only about song and dance. Please, it's an opportunity to make things right so that we all can benefit, right, from the contributions of so many. It is criminal to ignore certain people, whether it's First Nations. Even here today, at the beginning, you spoke about the land on which we stand on. Let's make it right. 10 years ago, I would never have heard that. Today I hear it, right? So we are on the right path, but we need more workers. We need more effort, determination, courage to make this right, not for some, but for all. So when Black History Month comes, Donald, you're lucky because you spoke to me a few weeks ago about today. I already turned down 3 more appointments today because I think this was important and because you came at me first, right? There's an excitement for Black History Month these days. There's a lot more events to choose from, stuff going on. So we're making progress. They told me, Louis, never leave your message on a negative note. So I'm trying to stick to that, right? Things are happening. People are excited. A lot of opportunities are there. Let's take full advantage, right? And do our individual part. When I'm talking to young people, I say, people are going to come and tell you you're going to be leaders of tomorrow. I say, hell no. You're not going to be no leaders of tomorrow because tomorrow never comes. You need to start leading today. So I leave that challenge with you today, right? As individuals, as family, as unions, as corporations, start leading. Become the tip of the spear now, not tomorrow. Thank you very much.